The gavel struck with a thunderous crack, its echo vibrating through the silent courtroom, as if the walls themselves recoiled from the verdict. Sirens wailed faintly outside, distant but ominous, reminding everyone that justice was rarely quiet. The guarded survivors sat frozen in the gallery, clutching the edge of the bench, their breath-shallow eyes unblinking, as the words of the judge cut through the air like steel. The warm comforter whispered gently, "It will be all right," though their hand trembled ever so slightly, betraying nerves beneath the surface calm. The reluctant firestarter's glare darted across the room, restless, as though they already knew more than anyone dared to admit. The steady anchor shifted in his seat, jaw tight, refusing to let his gaze wander from the courtroom floor. The velvet blade remained poised, eyes gleaming with unspoken authority, hands folded as if they controlled the very rhythm of the moment. In the back, a haunting memory lingered in silence, unseen yet palpable, the faint trace of a presence that refused to fade. The guarded survivor whispered, "Nothing will ever be the same," and the weight of the unseen truth pressed down on them all like a storm waiting to break. The courthouse emptied, footsteps fading like ghosts, retreating into silence. The guarded survivor remained seated, clutching the old bench as though it tethered her to sanity. The warm comforter said, "Come, you need rest," his tone soft yet insistent, his hand lightly brushing her arm. She flinched at the touch, unsure if comfort was truly free. The reluctant firestarter muttered, "Truth doesn't wait for rest," eyes sharp, voice edged with defiance. The steady anchor stood nearby, offering a reassuring nod, his calm presence anchoring the restless storm. Across the hall, the velvet blade walked with perfect control, heels clicking rhythmically, each step a reminder that power could walk unchallenged. The guarded survivor whispered, "Why does this place feel colder after justice is spoken?" The question hung in the air, unanswered, swallowed by the emptiness of justice itself. Night deepened, the rain outside now steady, tapping on the courthouse windows like relentless fingers. The guarded survivor finally rose, her legs unsteady, her face pale but defiant. The warm comforter guided her gently, whispering, "You don't have to face this alone," though the undertone suggested another kind of dependence. The reluctant firestarter hissed, "Alone is better than chained," and his glare toward the warm comforter carried unspoken accusation. The steady anchor intervened softly, "We must keep together," his words sounding like both warning and loyalty. From the shadows, the velvet blade observed silently, lips curling into the faintest trace of a smile. The guarded survivor said, "If we stay together we risk more than we can survive," her voice low, her steps uncertain, as thunder cracked beyond the glass. The storm outside grew heavier, thunder vibrating through the courthouse walls. The guarded survivor pressed a hand against the cold glass, her reflection blurred by water trails. The warm comforter said softly, "Storms pass, but wounds remain," his voice layered with empathy, and something darker. The reluctant firestarter snapped, "Stop pretending you care," his young defiance clashing against older patience. The steady anchor's voice cut firm, "Enough, this isn't the place," though his eyes darted briefly toward the velvet blade, as though awaiting unspoken instruction. The velvet blade stood silently, hands folded, every movement deliberate, as though even silence bent to her command. The guarded survivor whispered, "It feels like the storm is inside us now," her voice drowned by the sudden roar of lightning splitting the night. The group gathered in silence, their breath visible in the cold, unheated corridor. The guarded survivor sat again, exhaustion weighing her down. The warm comforter crouched beside her, whispering, "Every wound seeks a cure," yet the words felt rehearsed. The reluctant firestarter sneered, "Some cures poison you faster than the wound," his young voice raw with rage. The steady anchor stood guard, his calm presence like stone, but his eyes betrayed a flicker of guilt. The velvet blade finally spoke, her voice low and steady. "Justice is not about truth. It is about control." The words fell like ice, cutting deeper than the storm outside. The guarded survivor closed her eyes, whispering, "Then we are all already condemned," and silence stretched heavy, as though the building itself mourned the truth spoken aloud. The guarded survivor walked alone into a quiet park at dawn, the mist heavy over the grass as if it carried unspoken grief. She sat at a weathered bench, tracing its cracked wood with tired fingers, her breath rising in pale wisps. She whispered, "I survived, but at what cost?" Her voice trembled like fragile glass on the verge of breaking. The warm comforter approached, his footsteps careful, his smile soft, his words like balm as he said, "Survival is proof of strength, not weakness." Yet beneath the tone lingered something deeper, like sympathy crafted to control. The reluctant fire starter watched from a distance, sketchbook in hand, muttering, "Strength doesn't erase ghosts." His sharp gaze cut through the fog, piercing both truth and illusion. The steady anchor leaned against a tree, calm but watchful, chewing on words he didn't yet release. The velvet blade, unseen but near, observed with cold precision, her presence unspoken but pressing like a shadow stretched by dawn. The guarded survivor closed her eyes, whispering, "The world remembers only scars," and the morning birds fell silent as though mourning with her. The group gathered inside a café, warm light glowing against rain-smeared windows, the storm outside muffled by chatter and coffee steam. The guarded survivor sat near the window, silent, her reflection fractured by rivulets of water. The warm comforter placed a coffee before her and said, "Some moments need warmth more than truth." His voice was steady, but his eyes lingered too long, as though searching for cracks to widen. The reluctant fire starter sneered, "Truth doesn't vanish when you hide behind kindness," his hands restless on his sketchbook. The steady anchor ordered drinks for everyone, his voice calm, steady, almost rehearsed. He said, "We hold each other steady, or we collapse." The velvet blade entered quietly, her composure undeniable, heels tapping softly on polished wood, her presence freezing the room's warmth. The guarded survivor whispered, "Every shadow has roots," and silence swallowed the café, as though even strangers felt the weight of her words. Later, they walked down narrow city streets, puddles glistening under broken neon lights. The guarded survivor whispered, "I feel hunted even in the open," her voice low, almost devoured by the hum of traffic. The warm comforter walked close, his hand brushing her arm, his tone reassuring as he said, "No one will harm you while I am here." Yet his eyes betrayed a flicker of hidden thought. The reluctant fire starter walked ahead, glancing into alleys, muttering, "Danger doesn't knock, it follows." His sharp movements cut through the shadows. The steady anchor trailed slightly behind, hands in pockets, gaze scanning rooftops with quiet vigilance. From across the street, the velvet blade paused under a flickering light, her calm face unreadable, her stillness more threatening than movement. The guarded survivor whispered, "The city hides secrets, the law never touches," and her words melted into the night. Inside a cramped apartment, lit only by a single lamp, tension thickened like smoke. The guarded survivor sat at a worn table, her fingers tracing scars etched into its surface. She said, "Every scar tells a story we never escape." The warm comforter poured her tea, his voice soft, his words careful as he said, "Some scars are lessons, not prisons." The reluctant firestarter laughed bitterly. "Lessons burn just the same," his voice cutting the dim silence. The steady anchor leaned against the wall, his shadow large, his tone calm as he said, "We must choose whether pain builds or destroys us." The velvet blade entered, her silhouette flawless, every movement deliberate. Her voice flowed like silk, "Pain is currency, and I have always known how to spend it." The guarded survivor's hand shook as she whispered, "Then none of us are free," her eyes catching the glint of betrayal in the room. The storm outside finally broke, thunder rolling like judgment across the night. The guarded survivor stood at the window, arms wrapped around herself, voice trembling as she said, "Storms outside feel smaller than storms inside." The warm comforter approached slowly, his hand almost touching her shoulder as he murmured, "I can carry the storm for you." The reluctant fire starter snapped, "No one carries storms, they only choose who drowns." His young voice cracked but cut sharp. The steady anchor lit a cigarette, its glow soft in the dark, his voice steady as he said, "Storms pass, but damage lingers." From behind them, the velvet blade whispered coldly, "Storms cleanse. They strip everything bare, and only the strong remain." The guarded survivor whispered, "Then let the storm decide who survives," her reflection merging with lightning on the glass, fractured and eternal. The courthouse basement smelled of damp stone and dust, a place forgotten yet still holding secrets. The guarded survivor whispered, "This is where evidence lives or dies," her voice shaking with both dread and resolve. The warm comforter lit a dim lantern, his soft tone reassuring as he said, "We will find what they tried to bury." Yet his hand lingered too long on her shoulder, his warmth carrying the weight of hidden intent. The reluctant fire starter darted ahead, flashlight beam bouncing, muttering, "Truth doesn't hide, people do." His restless voice echoed against the stone walls. The steady anchor crouched near a locked cabinet, calm but deliberate, his tools clicking with quiet precision. The velvet blade stood at the edge of the shadows, her presence composed, as though even the darkness obeyed her stillness. The guarded survivor whispered, "If this room speaks, it will destroy us," and silence deepened as the lantern flickered weakly. A file was pried open, papers scattering across the dusty floor. The guarded survivor bent quickly, her hands shaking as she picked up fragments of a forgotten case. She whispered, "These names, they were erased." The warm comforter crouched beside her, voice steady as he said, "Not erased, only hidden." His words carried reassurance but masked a subtle satisfaction. The reluctant fire starter grabbed one paper, eyes widening. "This is proof," he spat, his voice loud, defiant, almost triumphant. The steady anchor reached out, calm but firm, careful, proof cuts sharper than lies. His steady tone carried both caution and regret. The velvet blade stepped closer, heels clicking softly, her voice low and commanding, "Truth belongs to those strong enough to control it." The guarded survivor whispered, "Then justice has never been ours," as the papers fluttered like ghosts under the cold air vent. The storm above rattled pipes in the basement, water dripping in erratic rhythm. The guarded survivor stared at a faded photograph from the files, her lips trembling as she whispered, "She's here. She never left." The warm comforter leaned in, his voice heavy with empathy as he said, "Memories linger because they are meant to guide us." Yet the depth in his eyes betrayed something less pure. The reluctant fire starter leaned closer, sharp voice cracking, "Memories trap us more than they guide." He held the photo tight, his young hands trembling. The steady anchor pressed his palm against the wall, silent for a moment before saying, "The past always costs the present." His tone was calm, burdened with guilt. The velvet blade glided closer, her eyes narrowing as she said, "The past is a weapon if wielded correctly." The guarded survivor whispered, "Then someone has already used it," her voice barely above the sound of dripping water. The basement door slammed shut above, echoing like a verdict. The guarded survivor gasped, clutching the photograph to her chest, whispering, "We're trapped." The warm comforter placed a hand on her arm, his tone steady. "Trapped doesn't mean defeated." Yet his calm felt rehearsed, like he had prepared for this moment. The reluctant fire starter ran to the door, fists pounding as he shouted, "This is a setup!" His young voice cracked with fury and fear. The steady anchor pulled him back, voice firm, "Save your strength. Panic wastes time." His steady composure was both reassuring and unnerving. The velvet blade stood untouched by fear, her eyes glinting as she said, "Doors close to test resolve. The question is who still breathes when they open again." The guarded survivor whispered, "Maybe justice was always a locked room," her words trembling in the stale air. Time dragged heavy in the basement, the silence broken only by the distant storm. The guarded survivor sat against the wall, whispering, "Truth is heavier than walls." Her words quivered like a confession. The warm comforter sat beside her, speaking softly, "Heaviness is shared until it fades." Yet his eyes glimmered with an unspoken claim over her trust. The reluctant fire starter paced furiously, his voice sharp as he shouted, "Truth doesn't fade, it rots if hidden." His restless energy filled the stale air. The steady anchor finally spoke, his tone calm but burdened. The hardest part is knowing who hides it. He stood in the shadows, unreadable. The velvet blade stepped forward, her composed voice slicing the silence. Hiding truth is not weakness, it is survival. The guarded survivor lowered her gaze, whispering, "Then justice may already be dead," her words shattering what hope remained. The basement air grew colder as a torn page revealed a hidden truth. The guarded survivor's voice shook. This witness, she lied under oath. Her fingers trembled as though holding poison. The warm comforter leaned close, tone soft but sharp. Lies protect more than they wound. His steady gaze lingered, concealing intent. The reluctant fire starter shouted, "She betrayed justice itself." His young voice cracked with anger that felt older than him. The anchor lowered his head, muttering, "Betrayal keeps the machine alive." His calm broke for only a breath. The velvet blade stepped forward, eyes glinting as she said, "Every lie has roots, and every root feeds someone powerful." The guarded survivor whispered. Then truth was never free, her voice hollow, as if her last hope had fractured. A hidden photograph fell from the file, its edges burned, faces blurred by time. The guarded survivor gasped, "She's connected. She was never a stranger." Her voice cracked under the weight of discovery. The warm comforter whispered, "Family ties can bind tighter than justice." His words slid like silk but cut like glass. The reluctant fire starter snarled, "So betrayal runs in blood," his eyes sharp, burning with wounded rage. The anchor exhaled slowly, muttering, "We can't change who we are bound to." His calm felt fragile, as if hiding a confession. The velvet blade's lips curved into the faintest smile as she said, "Blood always circles back, no matter how far you run." The guarded survivor clutched the photo, whispering, "Then truth is not justice, it's inheritance," her words echoing in the hollow room. The lantern flickered, shadows warping as truths twisted into new forms. The guarded survivor whispered, "The one who comforted us, he was never innocent." Her gaze darted toward the warm comforter, hands shaking. He smiled faintly, replying, "Comfort is never free." His voice dripped with controlled power, calm masking the storm beneath. The reluctant fire starter shouted, "You used us, you wrapped lies in kindness." His young voice rang sharp in the cold air. The steady anchor's expression darkened, muttering, "I knew this day would come." His calm tone faltered for the first time. The velvet blade's eyes narrowed with approval. Her voice sharp, "Sanctuary always carries chains." The guarded survivor whispered, "The betrayal cuts deeper than any wound," her tears falling unseen into the dust at her feet. Silence stretched heavy, then shattered by words unspoken too long. The guarded survivor cried, "Anchor, you knew, didn't you?" Her voice carried disbelief and sorrow. The steady anchor closed his eyes, whispering, "I chose survival over loyalty." His calm tone cracked with regret. The warm comforter's lips curled, muttering, "Loyalty is weakness when truth is dangerous." The reluctant fire starter stepped back, his young voice trembling. "You were the one we trusted most." His eyes filled with betrayed rage. The velvet blade tilted her head, speaking with cold authority. "The architect is always the one you least expect." The guarded survivor whispered, "Then trust itself is the enemy," her words breaking like glass, as though the final thread of faith had snapped forever. The air thickened with truth too heavy to bear. The guarded survivor whispered, "We are prisoners of lies, bound by those closest." Her words carried defeat and fury. The warm comforter smirked faintly, his voice like velvet, "Chains can be comfort if you choose to wear them." The reluctant fire starter slammed his sketchbook shut, shouting, "I will never wear your chains." His rage reverberated through the stone walls. The steady anchor lowered his gaze, muttering, "Sometimes betrayal is the only way to save what matters." His voice hollow, resigned. The velvet blade stepped forward, her elegant form glowing faintly in the lantern's last flicker, whispering, "And so truth reshapes into power." The guarded survivor whispered. Then justice has become the cruelest lie of all, her final words sinking into silence as darkness consumed the room. The trial chamber was silent before eruption, heavy with anticipation, faces pale under glaring lights. The guarded survivor clutched the witness stand, her voice quivering. This is where truth stands or falls. Her eyes darted across the courtroom, searching for courage. The warm comforter leaned forward from the bench, his tone low but sharp. Truth bends when people fear its weight. His voice slithered like silk wrapped in steel. The reluctant fire starter burst from his seat, shouting, "Fear cannot bury what's already burning." His fists slammed the wood, rage spilling like fire. The steady anchor pressed his palms together, eyes dark, muttering, "Fire destroys more than lies." His calm voice was fractured with guilt. The velvet blade rose, her presence commanding silence, her words precise. Justice is not truth. Justice is ownership. The guarded survivor's whisper cracked. Then let justice try to own me, and thunder shook the room like judgment. The guarded survivor's testimony pierced the silence, every word shaking like a blade. She cried, "They buried evidence. They buried lives." Her trembling hands pointed at files now forced into light. The warm comforter's calm fractured, his voice sharp. Survival sometimes demands silence. He rose, sweat glistening under the lights. The reluctant fire starter shouted, "Silence is murder when truth dies." His young voice cut through the chamber like glass breaking. The steady anchor closed his eyes, whispering, "I tried to hold us together, but I failed." His confession cracked the air with sorrow. The velvet blade smiled faintly, her voice like velvet steel. Justice is never about evidence. It is about the story people accept. The guarded survivor whispered, "Then I will tell mine, even if it kills me," and the crowd gasped in chilling silence. The storm outside rattled windows, lightning flashing across the chamber like judgment. The guarded survivor shouted, "Every scar I carry was born from silence." Her voice cracked but carried fire. The warm comforter's mask fell, his eyes dark, as he said, "Silence is the only thing that saves." His tone dripped with venom. The reluctant fire starter threw his sketchbook to the ground, screaming, "No more silence." His young defiance echoed like thunder. The steady anchor's voice broke, muttering, "I chose silence once, and it killed more than truth." His face bent with shame. The velvet blade raised her hand gracefully, speaking with chilling calm. "This trial is not for truth. It is for ownership of pain." The guarded survivor whispered, "Then I will own mine," her body trembling yet unbroken as the storm roared beyond. The judge's gavel thundered, but the chamber ignored it, voices colliding like waves in a storm. The guarded survivor cried, "The system is broken because those in power keep it broken." Her words hit like stones. The warm comforter hissed, "I held you together when truth would have destroyed you." His tone cracked with fury. The reluctant fire starter spat, "You never held her. You chained her." His eyes burned like fire. The steady anchor's voice was low, regretful. "Chains disguised as safety are still chains." His hands shook visibly. The velvet blade stepped forward, composed, her voice chilling. "Control is survival, and survival is mine." The guarded survivor whispered, "Then your survival ends with this," her words cutting sharper than steel as the storm outside shattered glass across the floor. Silence followed the shattering, as though the world itself paused. The guarded survivor stood at the center, her voice breaking, "Justice has been stolen, but I refuse to surrender." Her words bled defiance and despair. The warm comforter's calm returned, though his voice was bitter. "Surrender is mercy when truth burns everything." His eyes glimmered like ice. The reluctant fire starter shouted, "Then let it burn." His voice was sharp, pure rebellion. The steady anchor whispered, "And when it burns, nothing survives." His tone carried fatal weight. The velvet blade's eyes narrowed, her words cold, "Then perhaps survival was never meant for you." The guarded survivor whispered, "Maybe not. But truth deserves to live." Her final words, ringing as lightning, split the chamber, leaving all faces stark in the glow of reckoning. The gavel's echo had faded, leaving only silence in the courtroom. The guarded survivor sat slumped in the witness chair, her shoulders heavy, her eyes hollow as though she had spent every ounce of strength. She whispered, "Justice feels like ashes on my tongue." The warm comforter leaned forward, voice calm yet edged. "Ashes can be reborn into fire." His words slid like comfort laced with power. The reluctant fire starter stood near the shattered window, rain dripping onto his sketchbook as he muttered, "Fire burns everyone, even those who light it." His eyes held both fury and sorrow. The steady anchor leaned back, arms crossed, his voice quiet. "Sometimes survival means letting truth die." His face bore the weight of betrayal unspoken. The velvet blade adjusted her gloves, whispering coldly, "Survival belongs to the one who defines it." The guarded survivor whispered, "Then survival is no victory at all," as the storm outside softened into mournful rain. The courthouse lobby lay nearly empty, shadows stretching across marble floors. The guarded survivor stood near the tall doors, whispering, "The verdict changed nothing." Her words fell into the echoing hall. The warm comforter approached slowly, voice smooth. "Change is never immediate. Power shifts quietly." His eyes gleamed faintly in the dim light. The reluctant fire starter spat, "Quiet power is still corruption." His voice cracked with rage, his fists clenched. The steady anchor leaned against a column, muttering, "Corruption keeps the world turning." His calm sounded more like resignation than belief. The velvet blade descended the staircase gracefully, her heels clicking like a metronome of control, whispering, "Justice is not lost, it is redirected." The guarded survivor whispered, "Then justice is nothing more than theft with prettier words," and her voice carried bitter truth through the hollow chamber. The guarded survivor returned to her small apartment, the silence of the city pressing against thin walls. She whispered, "Survivors don't live, they endure." Her voice cracked as she set down the sealed letter she had carried for years. The warm comforter sat across from her, voice soft yet piercing, "Endurance is survival's greatest strength." His calm was unsettling, like chains disguised as kindness. The reluctant fire starter paced near the window, muttering, "Strength doesn't erase scars, it just hides them." His restless movements filled the quiet room. The steady anchor sat in the corner, his eyes dark, whispering, "I once thought scars were proof of loyalty." His words dripped with regret. The velvet blade stood near the door, her voice cold, "Scars are leverage. They remind you who holds power." The guarded survivor whispered, "Then I am nothing but a ledger of wounds," her hand trembling over the unopened letter. The storm cleared, leaving the city wet and quiet, neon lights reflected in puddles across the street. The guarded survivor walked alone, whispering, "The city feels unchanged, though I am not." Her voice quivered against the silence. The warm comforter appeared at her side, voice soft, "Change is invisible until it consumes you." His words wrapped like smoke around her. The reluctant fire starter followed, muttering, "Invisible change is the cruelest lie." His voice shook with fire suppressed. The steady anchor walked behind them, his voice low, "Some lies hold the world together." His face shadowed, unreadable. The velvet blade emerged from an alley, her eyes unblinking, whispering, "The world bends only to those who seize it." The guarded survivor whispered, "Then I am tired of bending," and her steps slowed, heavy under the neon glow. Night deepened, the group gathered one last time at the river's edge, water black under the moon. The guarded survivor whispered, "We fought for justice and still it slipped away." Her voice broke like the tide against stone. The warm comforter placed a hand on her arm, whispering, "Loss can be a new beginning." His voice was calm, but carried possession. The reluctant fire starter shouted, "No, loss is just another lie dressed in hope." His young voice cracked with despair. The steady anchor looked across the water, whispering, "I betrayed you for survival, but survival feels empty now." His face was etched with guilt. The velvet blade's eyes shimmered in moonlight, whispering, "Justice dies, but power never does." The guarded survivor whispered, "Then I choose to live with truth, even if it kills me." Her words carried into the night air like a vow etched into eternity. The courtroom stood abandoned, benches empty, dust floating in pale shafts of light. The guarded survivor walked slowly down the aisle, whispering, "Even echoes feel heavier here." Her footsteps cracked against hollow floors. The warm comforter's voice rose softly behind her. "Echoes are reminders that truth leaves marks." His tone was gentle, but the silence afterward was sharp. The reluctant fire starter kicked at broken wood, muttering, "Echoes mean nothing when no one listens." His anger sounded smaller in the emptiness. The steady anchor leaned against the wall, his voice low, "Empty rooms are the only places honesty survives." His words bled regret into the silence. The velvet blade stood at the far end, her shadow long and unwavering, whispering, "Empty rooms become altars when power decides." The guarded survivor whispered, "Then let this altar bury what justice never carried," and her voice trailed into stillness. The guarded survivor returned to the old bench outside, rain-worn and cracked, where she had once clutched hope. She whispered, "I came full circle, but the circle feels like a cage." Her hand traced the wood. The warm comforter sat beside her, voice tender, "Cages protect as much as they confine." His calm smile faltered only for a second. The reluctant fire starter stood nearby, muttering, "Protection is the prettiest word for prison." His young voice trembled with exhaustion. The steady anchor lit a cigarette, whispering, "Prison is sometimes the price of survival." His tone was hollow. The velvet blade passed behind them, her heels clicking faintly as she whispered, "Prison is power when you hold the key." The guarded survivor whispered, "Then I choose to break, not bend," her voice sharp with fragile defiance. The sealed letter lay in the guarded survivor's trembling hands, unopened all these years. She whispered, "The truth I avoided may already own me." Her voice cracked as she pressed it to her chest. The warm comforter leaned in, whispering, "Some truths are poison meant to stay sealed." His voice was low, almost pleading. The reluctant fire starter snapped, "Poison or not, it's hers to drink." His fiery words shook the room. The steady anchor murmured, "The letter holds not salvation but burden." His voice quivered with regret. The velvet blade stepped closer, eyes unblinking, whispering, "Open it, and you will know why power never dies." The guarded survivor whispered, "Then let the ghost speak," and slowly tore the seal, as silence pressed tighter than breath. The letter's contents spilled into the silence, words trembling under faded ink. The guarded survivor whispered, "She never left. She was taken." Her tears streaked down, her voice fragile. The warm comforter whispered, "Some disappearances are gifts." His tone was cutting despite softness. The reluctant fire starter shouted, "You call that a gift?" His voice cracked with fury. The steady anchor shook his head, muttering, "Every truth is too late once it's written." His eyes glistened with guilt. The velvet blade's lips curled slightly, her voice cold. "Taken or gone, she was always mine." Her words dripped with finality. The guarded survivor whispered, "Then her memory was never mine to keep," her trembling hand releasing the letter to the floor, ink bleeding under her tears. The group stood by the river at dawn, mist curling low, water black and endless. The guarded survivor whispered, "Justice died, but truth breathes through memory." Her voice was steady, stripped of fear. The warm comforter's tone softened, "Memories are prisons that follow." His words sank heavy into the mist. The reluctant fire starter shouted, "No, they are flames that refuse to die." His young voice burned fierce. The steady anchor looked down at the water, whispering, "Flames still leave only ash." His tone was heavy with finality. The velvet blade's voice cut sharp, "Memory is the cruelest master. It never releases." Her eyes pierced the fog. The guarded survivor whispered, "Then let memory haunt them, not me." her final words echoing over the water as the rising sun split the mist, leaving silence heavier than sound.